We've got a number of NASCAR things to talk about today. Chicagoland's return, Josh Williams not coming back to Kaulig, Christopher Bell, and maybe something else to mix in there as well. Teresa Earnhardt just refuses to go away, and Fox bought a portion of IndyCar on Thursday. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. I'm headed down to Bristol for the Speedway Classic on Saturday. Let me know if you're going, because I think it's cool that other race fans also are going to go check out this baseball game. And hey, who knows, maybe we can all meet up. But let's get into what we want to talk about today, because there's a number of NASCAR things to talk about that I don't think necessarily warrant their own segment on the show. So we're going to try to speed through these real quick. And we'll start off with what was announced on Wednesday when Kaulig Racing said that they had parted ways with driver Josh Williams effective immediately. He will not be in that 11 car this weekend in Iowa. Instead, Carson Hocevar will climb in that car, to which a number of people on the internet were like, 11 car to victory lane this weekend. Where is that coming from? Carson Hocevar has never won an Xfinity Series race. Not saying he can't. He definitely can. He has the talent to do that. But the 11 car this year has also not shown any sort of speed to contend for a win, let alone a top 5 and rarely a top 10 most of the season. Williams, though, for Josh, it just never really worked out. He came over from DGM, and it was a guy that could, perform pretty well in underfunded equipment. And you always wondered, hey, if he got into decent equipment, would he be able to climb up that, finishing order? And ultimately, he just never could. In his 54 races with Kaulig Racing, he had 6 top 10s, an average finish of 20.6. And when you look at his 3 seasons with DGM, he had an average finish of 20.9. So we never really saw that increase. He was behind both of his rookie teammates in points, and both of them have triple the amount of top 10s as him. So for Josh, it was just, something that didn't work out. He's a bit like a meme coin. That's the comparison I made on TikTok, and that's exactly what he is. He had his viral moment. His virality shot him up to the charts and gave him the opportunity to get a more competitive ride, and ultimately he could never just convert on that, and now he's left trying to pick up the pieces in a sense, although I'm sure he has an idea and some opportunities available for him, because he's a solid race car driver. Generally brings the car home in one piece, and he does bring a little bit of funding with him as well, so he'll find a spot in the sport, but it will not be at Kaulig Racing. Team president Chris Rice said that they will have an announcement in the future about, or not so distant future, about who their drivers are going to be in that 11 car for the remainder of the year. It's going to be multiple drivers, and remember, once they get to the playoffs, Cup drivers can't race in the Xfinity Series, so they're going to have to find somebody else to put in that car going forward. But Josh Williams, not in the 11 car this weekend or for the rest of the year. Now, moving on to Chicagoland Speedway. The other guy over at The Athletic, not named Jeff Gluck, said that Chicagoland will be back on the schedule next year, replacing the Chicago Street Course, essentially Mexico, if that's what, date swapping we want to do here. So now we have Mexico and Chicago Street Course out, Coronado Naval Base, as well as Chicagoland on the schedule for 2026. Now, Chicagoland hasn't hosted a Cup date since 2019. It was a fun racetrack in 2018. In 2019, it was okay. The thought process is the Gen 7 car races really well on intermediates, and with a really worn out surface, it should be able to put on a good show. We'll wait and see if that's going to happen. As we saw in the Carson Hocevar pictures, there's some wide gaps in between the lanes there. The seams have definitely stretched themselves out, and there's some, plantage? What? There are some plants growing in there, and a lot of things are going to need to be cleaned up. It's going to need to be painted, pressure washed. Buildings are going to need to be, taken care of. Probably some things replaced in there, and it's going to cost NASCAR about $4 million to get that track back up to race day shape, but it means that they will not abandon the third largest media market in the country, which is a win, although Joliet is about an hour outside of Chicago on a good day without a ton of traffic. So I'm excited to see him go back, but at the same time, Chicagoland doesn't do for the sport what the Chicago Street Course did. And for all the people that were like, get rid of the Street Course, it sucks, go back to Chicagoland, I better not see an empty seat in that racetrack come 2026, or else it's going to look desolate just like the rest of Route 66 it looks like these days. So we'll see how it goes. Dale Jr. said that that's not the last domino to fall on the schedule, which is interesting because I've literally heard nothing else on the schedule talk outside of Coronado, which had been rumored for a while and talked about, as well as Chicagoland. So we'll see what comes of it. No, they're not going back to Kentucky. No, they're not going to Rockingham. Rockingham's up for sale, so it doesn't really make sense right now to get a Cup Series date because, well, they don't really know who's going to own it. Wilkesboro getting a points paying date. maybe, but it still seems like a bit of a stretch as well. So we'll wait and see how it plays out. And if anything comes of it, then hey, I'll let you guys know how that's going to go. Then we have the topic of Christopher Bell. Now, if you missed it on Tuesday when NASCAR announced that Austin Hill had been suspended one race for intentionally wrecking the 19 car of Eric Almirola, which was very obvious, a ton of fans flooded my comments on TikTok and Instagram and NASCAR's page and everything, and they're like, why isn't Christopher Bell taking a vacation? Why didn't he get suspended for a week as well? He intentionally wrecked Zane Smith. So you missed it, and one of the restarts there at the end of the race, Christopher Bell, going down the backstretch, just turns left, and he hooks the 38 of Zane Smith, turns him into the outside wall. Bad look overall. Ultimately, NASCAR judged that C. Bell just misjudged, trying to get in behind the 38 to push the 38 down the straightaway, and when he went to move in behind him, he just hooked him and turned him into the wall. Really bad look, get it, but Christopher Bell doesn't have a track record of doing things like this, where, Austin Hill does have a track record of driving erratically at times and not being remorseful or apologetic or learning from his mistakes. It is worth noting as well that Skip Flores, one of the tire changers on the 38 car of Zane Smith, also one of the co-hosts over at Stacking Pennies podcast, did say that C-Bell came to their pit box after the race, apologized to all the pit crew members, said he's sorry, he messed up, it was on him. Then he went to the hauler and apologized to all the 38 guys back there as well, which is just a really good move by Christopher Bell. That's an adult move. That's what you do when you're mature. And I think that it's commendable that he did own up to his mistake and also, went down and faced those guys, because they're ultimately the ones that are going to have to push that broken car onto the trailer, into the hauler, and it's not fun. It's difficult at times. And I think that it was a good move by him overall. So that's our NASCAR roundup. Now let's get into Teresa Earnhardt. Teresa Earnhardt back in the news once again. If you remember back in October, she's trying to sell off Dale Earnhardt's 399 acre farm there in Mooresville, North Carolina. At that point, she was trying to sell it off to make room for a tech industrial park. And at that point, the Mooresville Board of Commissioners voted 8-0 against it, unanimously voted that it's not moving forward. Well, now she's not giving up on this dream of getting that $30 billion data center, the technology park in Mooresville, built on that property. So there's going to be a meeting on August 4th to decide if there needs to be a public hearing on September 15th to potentially rezone that property to allow this data center to go in and that project to move forward. There's a lot to unpack with this. So back in October when we talked about this, a lot of people freaked out. They were like, why does she want to get rid of DEI? Why does she want to get rid of where Dale's buried? All that kind of stuff. That's not this property. This property is separate from that, and it's 399 acres of just kind of open land. It's better for conservation than probably anything being built on it. And at that time, a ton of Mooresville residents were like, we don't want this. We don't need this. Carrie Earnhardt spoke out about it. A number of people spoke out about how it should just be a conservation area. Give it to the state, give it to somebody else like that, but don't build an industrial park on it. So there's a lot of concerns about a data center being built there. One of them was a noise concern. Typically, data centers really aren't that noisy. So that one, I don't know if it's super valid. They are a strain on resources at times. So there's a valid, reason there. And then also, right, it's an influx of new people to the area, of more traffic to the area. The infrastructure potentially can't handle it, but the developer says that it's going to bring high-paying jobs, recession-proof jobs, which that's a lie. No job is recession-proof, as we've learned over the last, 3 recessions, at least in my lifetime, or at least in the last 15 years. So I shouldn't say 3, 2, technically, if you want to count 2020 in there, whatever. You guys get what I'm saying here. But some of them are going to be high-paying jobs, like over 100 jobs or something in that range of like $125,000 or more. So they are high-paying jobs, but at the same time, you don't want to give up your way of life. It's a rural community with a mixture of agriculture, slower pace of life. They don't want the tech infrastructure in there. There's a lot that goes into that. Carrie Earnhardt, not really on board with this at all. He posted on Facebook about how he's upset that his family name is associated with this once again, and he'll be there at the meeting on August 4th to speak out against this. Obviously, Teresa's not going to be at the meeting. Somebody probably representing her will be there, or the developer will be there as well to answer any questions or give any input or anything like that. But yeah, she just doesn't want to give up on this dream of this $30 billion data center going in. And like, hey, on one hand, I completely understand the conservation side of things, right? Like, we've been looking at houses out in the middle of nowhere because I think we just want to live in the middle of nowhere at this point. At the same time, though, when you own that property, like if somebody's offering you X amount of dollars, if you're talking about, I don't know, 8 figures, it's hard to turn that down. Like it just is, regardless of how much money you have. So yeah, it's hard for me to sit here and tell somebody what to do with their finances, what to do with their property. But at the same time, as a person that does enjoy parks and conservation and, everything that goes along with that, I, want to see it stay like that. Because the last thing I like to see is, mature trees, mature forests, and, wildlife homes get torn down at the same time. So yeah, it's a real catch-22 with what's going on there, but ultimately we'll find out what happens August 4th and then potentially on September 15th. Last topic of the day, big news out of IndyCar. No, there's not another Penske cheating scandal happening, but instead Fox announced on Thursday that they have purchased a third of Penske Entertainment, the parent company of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as well as the IndyCar series, which in the rumored price was $125 to $135 million. And when you think about it, really isn't that bad of a price if Rick Ware can sell his Cup operation for $150 million, and that's not even a good one. So you can own part of the series, part of the most famous racetrack in the world, for less than you can buy a 2-car medaling NASCAR Cup Series program. So yeah, I think that maybe Fox got a decent deal here. Roger, of course, purchased the Speedway and the series back in 2019 for somewhere between $250 and $300 million was the rumored price that he paid for everything. And now he's brought on Fox as an investor. And Fox is going to help with future races, race promotion, finding sponsorship, everything that goes along with, buying into a race series. It is interesting that the network that shows the series, and now they've also signed on for an extended TV contract as well, that was also part of this deal, is now part owner in the series that they broadcast. It's a bit like the NFL's deal with ESPN, which will be voted on next month, where ESPN will buy the NFL network along with Red Zone away from the NFL, and the two entities will have a very close relationship. For me, I get uneasy about that because it feels like the network then becomes the mouthpiece for the league, state-run media, if you will. And I also get uneasy from the entertainment aspect because, the network wants entertainment. They want ratings. They don't care necessarily about the integrity of the sport if they can get some sort of ratings. I'm not saying a playoff is coming to IndyCar or anything like that because they've explored that idea and the team owners were like, F no. So we'll see if that, gets explored again. For me, one of the big questions coming out of this is what is the future of the Brickyard 400? Because if Fox, who now owns a third of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, wants that race on their portion of the schedule, that means that the Brickyard 400 is going to have to move to the first 14 races of the year. So do we get like a double header in May? Does May start with the Brickyard 400 and then lead into Indy 500 qualifying as well as the Indianapolis 500? If it means that the Indianapolis Grand Prix goes away, then yeah, I'm hugely in favor of this deal because that might be one of the worst races on the entire calendar. It is pointless, it is boring, and there is no reason to keep doing that race other than the fact that it's a home race and doesn't really cost anybody that much money. For Fox, though, I get it, right? Jeff Gluck pointed out something that believe it was Andrew Marchand maybe said. Fox learned their lesson with UFC. They helped build UFC up into this really recognizable brand that did a lot of ratings, and then they watched UFC leave them and go to ESPN for a huge contract. So now they have an ownership stake in this. Regardless if, IndyCar stays with Fox into the future, they still own a portion of it. So if it does, in fact, take off and, their next media rights deal is huge, they have, a really good amount of equity in the sport there that should increase over time. For Roger, dude's been racing since cigarettes were a food group, and I guess he knows what he's doing at this point. One thing that I've been critical of, and a lot of people have been critical of, is Penske Entertainment's lack of innovation, lack of understanding on, social media, how to effectively promote the sport, how to grow the sport, and it's really struggled since he's bought it. We've seen very little to no gains in terms of IndyCar's presence amongst the motorsport landscape. Yeah, the Indy 500 was up massively this year, and that's carried the weight for the rest of the season. And we can say that the season's up, 31% or something like that they said, or 41%. And that's true, but a lot of that is carried by the Indy 500. A lot of the races continue to get same or lower viewership than what they got last year on NBC, and they still are 200, 250, 300,000 viewers most weekends behind the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Granted, the Xfinity Series isn't going head-to-head with the NASCAR Cup Series, but that's something that IndyCar is going to have to face. For IndyCar, though, their Fox Sports CEO is a huge IndyCar fan. Big fan of the Indianapolis 500. Grew up in Indiana, owns a bar outside of the Speedway. So for him, that's probably a dream come true. And it's probably the start of a very long-term relationship between Fox and IndyCar. If you're on the NASCAR side of things, if you're a NASCAR fan, like, I would be worried probably about the quality of content, quality of broadcast you're going to get for NASCAR next year, especially with Fox seemingly going all in with IndyCar now. But they've got a long road to go to try to grow that sport, to try to get it popular, try to get it even up near where the Xfinity Series is. There's a lot of things that they could do better, and maybe they will do better into the future. But for now, I'll reserve judgment. I'll see what they do. Fox hasn't exactly given us a lot of hope over the years in terms of how they broadcast things, so I'd be reluctant to say that Fox is going to really be the spark that this series needs to take off. But at the same time, maybe they are. We'll have to sit back and wait. But for now, Fox owns a third of IndyCar, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Penske Entertainment overall. So we'll see what the future holds for them. But it's certainly an interesting partnership, and I don't think something NASCAR would entertain, but who knows what happens in the future. So let me know in the comments what you thought about Josh Williams getting essentially fired. Should Christopher Bell been suspended? Chicagoland's coming back. Teresa Earnhardt wants to build a tech center, and Fox buys a portion of IndyCar. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok @BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook @BreakHardBlog.